Hey everyone, good morning. Happy Friday. It is almost the end of the week, a long week here in Atlanta, Georgia, at least for me, for the cold and everybody being off school from the snow and then the cold and all that. I'm sure some of you have had the same thing, but I hope you've gotten through it and I hope you haven't had too many issues with the weather there, wherever you are. And our hearts, again, like we said last time, go out so much to the people in California. Hope everyone's safe out there as well. But I just wanted to welcome you. It's been a minute since I've done a live stream, and I appreciate your patience with me. Again, lots going on in my life behind the scenes, and I've talked about my situation quite a bit. Anyone that wants to support me, all the links are in the description of the video. But today we're here to talk about a particular topic called how Christianity becomes an obsession. And this is probably going to be a 2 or 3 part live stream. And I have a special guest with me I'm going to bring on, Kelsey. Kelsey, let's bring you on here. Kelsey, welcome to the channel again.
Thank you. Hi.
It's great to see you. And Kelsey and I have had an interview before. I'll pop that link in the comments in a minute. But I did just want to start by making sure I popped in the link for her YouTube channel, Accidentally Agnostic. Please do check it out. She's doing great work, and we need to encourage everyone that is at a point where they're able to do a platform. We just want to say, thank you for being willing to speak up and keep the great work going. So everyone, please go subscribe. Let me see how many subscribers you have right now.
Oh gosh, it's like 25.
25. Let's get that up to 35 by the end of this thing, okay, guys? Everyone, go hit that button. You gotta support Kelsey.
There's only a few things to watch right now, and they're silly and sarcastic. But I'm working on more. I'm working on Bible studies, where I will accidentally reveal horrible truths about God, and I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
it'll be funny.
It's all work in progress. I'm always rethinking myself too, my platform. So yeah, just whatever you feel like you feel like this, however the Spirit leads you, keep going. We need it. But we're here to talk about a particular topic called how Christianity becomes an obsession. And again, we're going to do this sort of as a discussion between Kelsey and myself, but also we're going to, of course, jump in with some comments here or there. I'm not going to focus, every second on the comments, but if anyone does have some thoughts, feel free. Let me just start by clicking on a few here, and then we'll jump into our content. Carol says, sorry it was too long, but I feel only God can fill my need. Don't know what to do. So I run back in the cage to feel safe. Yeah, Carol, that's totally understandable. And you need to do what feels right for you. This is your journey. There's no right and wrong to it. But just keep on, taking it one day at a time. And especially, like I've talked about a lot, focus on understanding the origins of Christianity, where it came from. And I think eventually, slowly, you'll find that it's just something you just can't believe anymore. But you definitely need to feel safe in your own skin, in your own mind. There's no judgment from us for you taking a journey that's a little bit different than ours. But just understand that we are here to support you. I think I've seen a few comments like that before from you in the past. And I'm sorry. It's a very rough journey for you. But just please feel a big hug from this community. But please understand, you're not safe in the arms of Yahweh. Yahweh is not a safe character. Thankfully, he's not real, in my opinion. But to go back to the cage of Christianity or Yahweh is not a safe place. But you definitely need to do what's right for you at this point in your journey. Mike says, silly and sarcastic is my jam. Awesome. Thank you so much for subbing. Appreciate it. HVAC Dad, God and Christianity don't mean the same thing. Yeah, exactly. There's number one, there's that part of it. But for those of us who are, by and large, coming from that background for this community, they did mean the same thing to a lot of us. But yeah, point well taken. Well, I wanted to jump in here with, I'm going to look down at some notes. I apologize. My eyes will drift a little bit. I hate to do that, but I do want to stay on target. Kelsey, I'm sorry, I'm keeping you sort of in the background here, but I want to have you jump into just a second. But we're going to talk today about how Christianity becomes an obsession. And I think for a lot of us, it really did become that. It was not a Christmas and Easter kind of thing. And when I say obsession, I don't mean that as in like, oh, I have to do everything for God. And, just God is, God is just waiting to get me if I don't do, 100 things for him. I don't mean like that. I mean, like we were obsessed in the sense that when you've maybe have waited for the love of your life and you thought, I don't think that person exists, and you've kind of given up, and then that person shows up and you're like, oh my freaking God, that person is here, they're in front of me, and I love it. And you're home waiting for so long. You feel like you're in such a good spot, and it just feels like this is the best thing ever. And you're obsessed, not in the sense of necessarily punishment. I didn't live my life thinking I'm going to dread that God's going to get me at any minute. I just loved my Lord and Savior. I loved the gospel. And we're going to talk about how that happens. It's many little steps, micro steps. And another way of saying this would be, how do you indoctrinate someone really, really, really well? So we're going to talk about things like foundational narratives, your emotions, how the core doctrines become internalized, how the community, the church community reinforces this, how you get personally invested with your time, your resources, just your whole spiritual anxieties, even things like missions trips and so forth, your commitment, and how it's based on both excitement and passion, as well as fear-based in many cases. The exclusivity of truth. We'll talk about biblical literalism, how that plays into it, moral policing, how your identity becomes really enmeshed with the church and with Christ. You're really more of a servant of Christ than yourself. How your cognitive dissonance plays into that, how your doubts get suppressed. And there's a whole bunch more. I would read the whole kind of outline of where we're headed with this, but honestly, we're not going to get through it all today. So we'll probably go for about an hour, hour and a half. And we're going to do a second or third one to sort of go through this. And I would love, again, your input on this. But let's just jump in for the first part of it. Exposure to foundational narratives is where we're going to start. But before I read through some of the notes I wanted to do for that, Kelsey, could I just ask you, at what point in your life would you say you would have looked back and said, I definitely can say I was obsessed with Jesus and with my relationship with him? And just what did it mean to be obsessed to you?
Well, my last 3 years in it, I was absolutely 200% obsessed, like everyone would tell you. But growing up, I worked on, I was a work in progress. I was always working to be more and more obsessed, like, because when it's just absolutely true, there's no other way to be. You just need to self-indoctrinate. You need to self-brainwash. So it was always, and now I can see clearly it was always trying to please a parent, like wanting to be good in your parents' eyes. And that really messes with you. And you can easily get obsessed over that.
That's true. That's a good point. I think that's fascinating that you brought that up. I wasn't thinking along those lines, but yeah, in many ways, that's where this plays out, and just the obsession, perhaps even just more broadly, just to be acceptable. Just that feeling of like whether it's an actual dopamine rush or something, but just to think I feel so unacceptable and so unloved, and like the future is just so dark, and I'm not safe in my own skin, and suddenly you feel safe in your own skin again. It feels so good. It's like a drug. But well, in terms of where we're starting from, the exposure to foundational narratives, I've been thinking about how for a lot of us, this is where it starts, because you can't become obsessed with something unless you really have it in your mind, and really it becomes part of your spiritual DNA. But these foundational stories and the teachings that we got in Christianity, they introduce to us these key themes of faith. There's these stories that are given to us in these warm contexts, maybe at Sunday school or in your parents' arms, reading these Bible stories of, ironically, this is when God drowned everybody in the flood. Isn't that so wonderful that he, saved Noah? But you get, I remember the toys, you literally you go buy a Fisher-Price Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
And it just feels warm and happy. And it kind of plants these seeds for this worldview that's really meant to be lifelong. Like, this is not a temporary thing. This is not a crutch. This is your everything. And, those foundational narratives become the building blocks of our faith, the stories about creation, sin, redemption, salvation. And they're presented as universal truths that are unquestionable. They're not interpretations. They're not symbolic lessons. They're actually authoritative information that you have to have. And it's introduced in early childhood, of course, when you trust everybody around you, you trust your authority figures, and your ability to critically evaluate information is still very much in flux. And then you get through these, you're integrating them into daily life. You hear all these stories of the disobedience, how bad that's going to be if you disobey. You're born a sinner and Jesus needs to save you. Everything from that to the inspirational stuff like Daniel in the lion's den and the Good Samaritan. And, you're learning how to pray, how to look for God's help. These things are repeated, they're reinforced. The emotional appeal gets cranked up. Like, what was it like? Like, do you remember the first Christian stories that you were exposed to? And like, how did that shape your understanding of God and the world at that time? Like, what were the first stories, and what did they do to you?
So pondering that question, two things came up. The first story I can remember, of course, I got way more cutesy stuff in nursery, in the nursery, but the one I can remember is the gospel at 4 years old, at my dining room table. And, I was pondering that, like, that was the first paper cut that I can remember into because what it was, here, little Kelsey, come sit down. Let us tell you that you are flawed. You are not good. You are lacking goodness, or however it was framed. You are lacking, honey. And someone, a man, a long time ago had to suffer because you are sitting here now lacking goodness. I mean, that in itself is a mind F, right? Like, so that's going to throw me off kilter. Like, I was just fighting with my sister over toys. I just tried to eat my dinner like a good girl, like I'm living this little life, and then you come in here, swooping in here and forcing me to think about big, huge things, like existential, philosophical things that are far beyond. Like, that's a mind F, right? The other thing I thought of was Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Left arm, right? To get you to do the hokey pokey in Sunday school. So I remember thinking, this is just one stupid example. Father Abraham had many sons. I am one of them. So hold on. So I'm not a son. I'm a girl. Like, I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. So why am I saying I'm a son? And why are we talking about Abraham being my father? Because my father is not Abraham, as far as I know. Like, what? So it's very interesting how your own thinking is hijacked, right? And so from the very beginning, you are you're trying to make sense of stuff, but you're not allowed to make sense of stuff because you need to sit down and shut up and listen to the explanation, right? That was the first couple of things that came to mind, is just how your thinking is just hijacked.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's fascinating that you brought up the Father Abraham thing, because I was thinking about how that also introduces the whole in-group, out-group. We're the chosen, you're not. Like, that's a huge deal, both with talking about Israel as a nation, and then, of course, in Romans, like the true Israel, the true people that really have the righteousness from God. And then, of course, when you flesh out the New Testament, where it's not even, like blood Israel, it's like spiritual Israel, where you become like, it doesn't matter if you're from the line of Abraham. It's like, are you spiritually the line of Abraham? But either way, you end up with this sense that God has a plan, and it basically includes, there's a whole bunch of people that are just going to completely miss. One second, it's a troll here. You're going to completely miss the boat, because you are basically trying to do it your own way, and you end up looking at the other people in the world as like, I'm sorry, but you're basically screwed. And like, I remember a lot of sermons where it was presented as God is basically looking at the whole world, and it's as if someone like comes up to you, like grabs your coat and like shakes, like, why are you intent on dying? Like, why do you want to end your life? Why do you want to go to hell? It's like, he's like, I want to save you. Let me save you. And that's how you end up getting in this mentality. Like, everybody just basically is saying, I'm okay with giving God the middle finger, because I'd rather be on the throne than God. And when you grow up with that, and you think everyone else is just so bad, and every other religion, of course, is so bad, every other non-Christian perspective, even Christian perspectives that aren't like my interpretation of the gospel, it's all bad. And you get such an arrogance. I mean, you can say to yourself, I'm humble, but you really have an arrogance of like, I have the right message and the right interpretation of the message. And it drives you into this sort of perpetuating thing of like, I am so glad that I'm one of the elect. I'm so glad I'm one of the chosen. I mean, even if you're not a Calvinist, that still kind of plays into the equation a little bit. You mentioned the songs? Did you feel like when you look back at it all, that the repetition became a big thing in sort of reinforcing it? Because it feels like for a lot of us, when you look back, it wasn't just that we got the messages, it's that they were drilled in your head so much.
Oh yeah, that's essential. And from their side of it, they're just wanting to train up their kids and wanting to slip those seeds in there, right? But like, I was just talking to a friend. It's funny talking to people who have remained pretty neutral about church and pretty neutral about faith. Like, I don't understand it. So you come away from conversations with friends like that and realize, like, it sounds like they weren't constantly exposed. It sounds like they were, maybe, luckily for them, they were only Christian, Christmas and Easter church going families, because they had Sundays away from the place where they could be developing their thought processes and developing appropriately. And they didn't have the repetition. But for those of us that got so much of the repetition, it certainly accomplished what it was supposed to. We would call it brainwashing and indoctrination now, but they were just trying to train their kids up in the way they should go. And it's very successful when it's so repetitive. Yes.
Yeah. And I think too, when you mix in there the whole sheltering idea, where for a lot of families, you don't have non-Christian influences. You don't watch those movies, those shows. You don't listen to those songs. You don't have necessarily many or any non-saved friends. You're always, even if you have neighbors that are unsaved, you're always just filling your schedule up with church and, Bible study and prayer group and Awana and home group. And it's just like, everything is about Jesus. Everything is about that sense that we all need to be doing one big thing, which is moving ourselves toward our Lord and Savior. So, privately move yourself toward him, collectively urge yourselves towards him. And if you do that, if you align with that, you're going to be in the best spot ever. And if you don't, you're in great danger. And yeah, it's interesting that the repetition stuff, I think it's, as a Christian, you really feel like you're basically inoculating children against sin and against pride, against the devil by doing this. And it's almost like it's like a spiritual vaccination,
Yeah. But you're actually inoculating them against their own thoughts and feelings, their own being, other information out there. Yeah, you're inoculating them against a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, almost to the point that you as a child feel like my own thoughts are irrelevant. It doesn't really matter what I think, and almost sure. Less than irrelevant. It's more like it's almost like it's dangerous, because you can't trust your own understanding. I'm going to jump for 1 second to a few quick comments that I'm sure related here. Susanna's in the room. Thank you so much, Susanna. Great to see you. Appreciate you being here. Peter Pan, if Adam and Eve ate the apple, then why punish other animals as well? Yeah, it's a great point. Why is all of creation groaning if it's just Adam and Eve? Why not just annihilate them or zap them, send them to hell, and start over with another group of people? But it doesn't have to punish the whole of creation. It's interesting how that works. Oh my goodness, my last few years wanting to pass the best Christian version of me, so I dug deep. Yeah, trying to fight the pride of being made for his glory. Yep. Let's see here. Is that your husband?
Yeah.
Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you here. Appreciate your support as well. Peter Pan, religion makes us think Earth is less important than a virtual heaven or a scary hell. Yeah, exactly. It kind of tells you this isn't your home. You're just passing through, and it's important. It's like, tend God's garden while you're here, but in your head it's really all going to burn soon, so don't really care about it. Totally agree. The brainwashing, what goes in your eyes and ears, all carefully picked out. Yeah. It's fascinating how the filters, and special. Like, were you in a hyper sheltered group, or did you have like non-Christian friends?
Yeah, I had a lot of non-Christian friends. I was not sheltered at all. I've tried to convey, I think I tried to convey it in my interview with you too. Like, my crowd is really like, I feel very on the fence. Like, hey, Sundays, this is true, but we also need to head into the world and be real people. And get along regularly with the regular world. And I could sense like, wait a second, I don't like that. Like, I wanted to shelter myself. Like, why aren't y'all sheltering me more? Like, you told me something on Sunday and it sounded like a big deal, a big friggin' deal. And now Monday morning, it's kind of like, we didn't talk about that. I still remember what we talked about yesterday. Why aren't we acting accordingly? So that was my journey where I actually moved into sheltering myself, working harder to be more radical than my crowd. Anyway.
It's interesting. It almost reminds me of like how we often do that kind of thing with life in general. Like I was thinking of food, where if you're a little kid, you're not thinking of health issues and this and that. But if you suddenly at like age 10 to 15 start hearing in school or different things you might catch on YouTube or something about being healthy and not eating poorly, and all of a sudden, like your parents have been telling you, stop eating so much sugar, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But eventually you get really concerned, like, actually, I can see where this is going. I could have a health issue if I don't stop drinking soda every day. And so it's kind of like that. You get to a point where you're like, this isn't my parents' faith anymore. I'm not inheriting it. I am not taking it. I'm not, a God's grandchild. I need to be actually God's direct child. I need my faith. And for a lot of us, it gets very exciting at that point because you feel like you're no longer on the sidelines. You feel like you're actually part of the story. And especially, I think, when you get into youth groups, like I was in a youth group where you really got this sense that you can make a direct impact and that your impact can be outrageously massive in this world, fighting against the devil, fighting for God's kingdom and his glory. But you have to be willing to give up everything. And it became, there was a lot of peer pressure in my groups, at least, to say, like, what are you willing, like, how far are you willing to go to shine for Jesus? And if you're not willing to give up everything, then your faith is basically a sham. Did you get that, any of that messaging?
Yes. Yeah. Especially when you go off to youth conferences, women's conferences, where we're kind of huddled around a little more and trying to make it more intense, make the prayer more intense, and make the Bible study deeper and more intense. You come away from that feeling like, holy cow. I mean, again, we're hanging out on a Friday, Saturday, at a conference talking about this stuff, but then I'm supposed to just go back to my regular life on Monday and do regular things. Like, no. So I call it a fire in your belly. And like you said, you can do it. You can feel a fire in your belly about anything in life. Like, wow, I'm really going to lose this weight. Wow, I'm really going to get in shape. Wow, I'm really going to paint the kitchen. Like a fire in your belly where you yourself have taken on this, like I really care about this myself and I'm going to rock it. Yeah.
I remember we'll go into the next point in a second, but just wanted to mention this in this context. One of the people that meant a lot to me, two people that are very connected, John MacArthur and Steve Camp. Do you know those names?
I know John MacArthur.
Okay. John MacArthur, of course, is the pastor. He's still living, but he's very much he was preaching a lot about lordship salvation, the message of if you want to say Jesus is my savior, but you want to act like he's your Lord, then he's neither your Lord nor your savior. Because if you're truly accepting him, you're accepting all of him. You're not accepting the little slice of him that you want. You're accepting him as he is, and he is the king. He is the ruler. And so he rules over your life or he doesn't. And if you want to interpret it in some minuscule, I'll take a quarter of Christ and the 3/4 that's kind of, overwhelming me. I don't want that part. No, you take them all. He wants to overwhelm. He wants to run your life. And one of the people in his church that was sort of I think an assistant pastor or something. It was also a musician. He eventually became his own pastor of his own church. But Steve Camp, and he was a musician that his music meant a lot to me. And he was quoting this guy, this missionary's old pastor, C.T. Studs. He said, some want to live within the sound of a church or chapel bells. I want to run a rescue shop within a yard of hell. And Steve Camp took it a little bit. He changed it up a little bit, but he said, I want to run a mission, a yard from the gates of hell. And that idea, and when you mix it with like some of the missionary stories, he is no, Jim Elliot, he is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. And you get this sense that like you have so much foolishness and temporary world around you, And if you could just lift the veil for 1 second and see the glories of what God is doing, and as it were, see the angels on the hills surrounding you, there is a battle going on, and you're being invited by the King of the universe to get involved in a major, beautiful way and change the dynamic for your friends and those hurting around you. And it's just like God is saying, will you please let me do something amazing with your life? And you get like this awareness, you're it's like the scales falling, like, yes, I will do it. I will do anything for my Lord and Savior. Here, my Lord, send me. And once that flips as a teenager, and I'm jumping ahead of some of our other points, but like the obsession gets into overdrive because now it's personal. Now it's like, this is not anyone else. It's like, this is me. I am a servant of Christ, and I will give everything for him. And it just, if you get to that level, everyone else around you seems like their commitment is garbage, and just like, I don't care what you all do. I'm sold out for Christ.
And again, your own thinking, your own reality is being hijacked, is being stolen from you. Like, this is your everyday experience, Kelsey, but let me tell you why your everyday experience is horseshit, and why you need to actually be paying attention to all this invisible stuff happening around you. Like, that's, you were preaching a little too well, and it was triggering me. Never mind your feeling and your thought about this or that, Kelsey. Let's shove away your reality, and let me tell you all the pretend, invisible, mythological, apocalyptic things you need to be caring about. That is so, and then you're bankrupt mentally and emotionally, because your reality has always been shoved on the shelf, and you've had to actually be living you've been having to think delusionally and live according to all this invisible stuff.
Yeah. And I think it really too, it takes your focus so much off of real important issues in life, but your focus becomes, how do I interpret this passage? And, like, am I a 4-point or 5-point Calvinist or whatever? And everything becomes about like, that's the biggest deal, and the big question of like, which pastor is going to be the best at expositing scripture, and am I getting the best information, and all this stuff, and am I being too liberal? Am I, which church is the best church? And it all just, these questions consume you as opposed to your actual real life, and you feel like you just desperately need more information about the Bible and about what it means and how to interpret it better. It takes your whole focus. They don't want you distracted. They want you heavily focused, and so they just take up every little spot of your life and your mental energy. They've got something to fill in those gaps, and they fill it in, every which way. Mm-hmm. I do want to go on to point number 2, which is the emotional side of this. Some people might call it emotional resonance, but this idea of embedding these teachings deeply into your psychological mentality. You're looking at our emotions like love, fear, guilt, hope. And you've got these connections where it's almost like, for a lot of us, it kind of goes above logic and rationality and information to a very strong sense of spiritual intimacy, and a sense of like, I am walking with my Lord and Savior. I can feel him. I can feel his presence. Like when I was sinful before, I was thinking of a wrong thought, and I confessed it. And I just feel like this spiritual, syrupy, sacerdotal goo, like he's just wrapping his Holy Spirit arms around me. And, it feels personal. It feels profound. It feels intense. The joy, the gratitude, thank you, God, for saving me from myself, all that kind of stuff. But you feel like his presence is there, and you feel like this is the way to those mountaintop experiences of this deeper spiritual commitment. And you get it playing out in everything from the big picture of like church and your worship services, to your and altar calls, to your personal experience where you're opening up the Bible at home, the testimonies of people saying, I was doing this, I was doing that, I was sleeping around, I was doing drugs, and God transformed everything. And you hear it in the songs, and you sing the songs in your head, and then you're, make sure you put them in your car as you're driving. And when you mix all that with the fear and the guilt and the hope and the comfort, and all these like one-off events of like your Bible studies and your baptisms and your weddings and your funerals, and everything is just so emotional, so symbolic. And you feel like there's all these milestones that are happening, like I'm progressing, not just in my information, but in my true intimacy with God. And eventually it really becomes like the emotional component becomes overwhelming. Like when you look back, was there a moment where you felt like you could say you first felt like God's tingling your spine presence, where it's like, oh my God, he's actually here. I can feel him in my body, as it were.
That was my entire existence in church and in church events. So I can't even point to one. We talked about in my interview, some of my earliest days in church entailed watching people go up for prayer, being prayed over, and then falling back, struck by the Holy Spirit.
Oh wow!
So I remember
the slaying
that.
Slaying the Spirit, was it?
Yes. I remember witnessing that and just needing to make sense of that and incorporate that into, okay, I guess this is real life, you know. But myself, it's hard to even point because we're pretty charismatic. Worship wasn't worship if you didn't come away, you know, crying and your hands in the air. And so that's just how we existed. I can't point to one time.
Yeah. I think you probably had more of an intense experience than I did, which is, it's in some ways I'm kind of glad that mine wasn't as intense, but I think it's all variations of the same thing. We sort of did it a different way, where the more formal side of it left us feeling closer to God, but not necessarily because we were shouting or dancing or anything, but almost like the information was like God was pulling back the curtain for us mentally, like over and over. Like God was like, I want to reveal something to you, and it's information, but most of the people who don't get it, it's almost esoteric. Like, I want to tell you what I really mean in the Bible. So where they're dancing, we're going to go into the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic, or we're going to get deeper, and we're going to see with these insights, because, you know, we're all about exposition and about truly verse by verse, line upon line, telling you what it really means. And almost like all these people are, you know, they're on their emotional high, but we're going to kind of go at it differently. But it was an emotional high. It was just an emotional high of this intellectual, aha, look at this. God wants to expose you and this little group to the truth that almost no one else, even other Christians, aren't going to get. And so you get this emotional, like you're going to keep your hands down and be real quiet because you're in a more conservative church, but you're still like inside thinking, oh, this feels good. I've got more information. I'm smart here, and the other idiots don't get it. It's like it's just variations on the theme, you know?
Yes. Makes sense.
I was thinking about songs a lot. Do you remember any particular songs that meant a lot to you, or any lyrics?
A million did.
While you're thinking, I'll just say that I think the ones that got me the most were the ones where they used phrases like "good, good Father." That just every time you got this sense that he's the Father. I think partly because my dad and I weren't close, although that it may not have been because of that or not, I don't know. But you know, my dad and I weren't close over the years. He's passed now, but you know, there's a lot of issues there, a lot of abuse as well. But you know, at the end of the day, when you get this sense that, like, no matter what your heaven or what your earthly parents are like, you've got a good Father. Mm-hmm. And he's not just good today, but he's been planning stuff, and you're part of his story, you know?
Yeah. And I guess one theme in music that maybe spoke to me a lot was the messages that reinforced me not being good, me not being worthy, me not being trustworthy, you know, a wretch like me. Because I was a mess mentally and emotionally, not in touch with myself. And when we can sing pretty lyrics and music, then that just kind of reinforces, so I need him all that much more, you know, just reinforcing the brainwashing and the hijacking of myself.
Yeah. I think I would add to that too. It's sort of related, but a little different. But the idea of just God's going to restore the years that the locusts have eaten. Like, I feel like for me, especially when C.S. Lewis got involved in my theology, as it were, when he got involved, the idea that there's a story going on, and it was like we were hearing a lot of storytelling around us, but the idea that you're in a story, and God is literally writing your story, and He's got something planned, like you are worthless, but He's going to make you shine, or you feel so hurt, but He's going to take the hurt and just like Job, He's going to give you twice as many of everything, and that idea that He's going to make it all good in the end. It really, that for me, I would walk into church sometimes, and maybe I was late. Maybe, I'd walked in and I didn't hear the first 30 seconds of the song, but the song was along these kind of lines that we're talking about. And I could be in tears within 10 seconds. Just like and you kind of, when you're ignoring it because life is so busy the rest of the week, maybe you're not feeling as close to God as you want to, and you finally get into the church service and it just feels like this emotional release is just waiting for you. It's very, very intense in a lot of ways, especially if you have sensed that life hasn't gone very well for you. Life has gone opposite of the way you thought it was. And you thought He was involved and He was doing things, and the door slammed in your face. It's like, God, where are you? And He comes almost like in brilliant colors. Oh, no, you don't understand. I've been here the whole time. You don't see it, but I've been here the whole time. Trust me,
Delicious plot twist. No,
exactly.
What's really ironic is that now I would love for the Lord to restore the years that the locusts have eaten. Please and thank you. Because He stole so many years. I'd like Him to restore them now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly. As well as maybe the tithes and offerings. Restore those as well.
That'd be nice.
For a minute, let's talk, since we're talking about church a little bit, the idea of these worship services and these songs, when you look back, do you feel like you could see that some people were doing things to sort of create a mood, to carefully orchestrate things? I mean, I feel like my church environments, they were doing it, but not necessarily as much as a church like yours. When you look back, do you feel like there was a lot of manipulation, or do you feel like most people were just genuinely on fire for the Lord, and that was all they meant to do, even if it was effectively manipulation? Like, how do you see it now?
Yes, I see it as both, because when you're so brainwashed, I don't mean to use that because it sounds so mean. Because in these environments, you really think this is real, and you're really wrapped up in it, and so it's both, because you see people being passionate and praising, dancing, praying, preaching so passionately, that's gonna really hit you, honestly. But then I was also one of those people that were doctoring up the song list. Like I'm truly 100% believing everything, but I'm gonna doctor up this song list because I know that we should start with a super exciting one, and then a medium exciting one, and then we're going to have like a super emotional, slower one that really ramps up with the bridge, and the hands are going to go up, and it's going to be awesome. And then after that super emotional one, we're going to bring it down, and it's going to be more somber and calm, and you're going to be able to contemplate more of your life, the lyrics, whatever. So it's both, because people really are being passionate, but we also have this like unconscious or subconscious sense that we do need to help things along. Like, we do need to funnel the excitement in these different ways to really pack the punch. So it's both.
Yeah, it really is. Just give me 1 second. Getting a little frog in my throat here this morning. Yeah, it really is both. And it's amazing too, where when you look back at it, there's a point at which, for a lot of us, we became part of that system where we were leading worship or leading whatever, at least for youth group or something, even for kids church, something. And it's weird when you look back at it and you see the baton passing from them to you. It's almost frightening how easily it happens, where you're like, I didn't really think about what I was doing. I taught children, I taught teenagers, and there was never this intermediate phase where I thought, am I sure that I should be doing this? Am I sure am I teaching them the right thing? And of course, you do think about it in a sense, because you're like, I know that I have the right message, but it's kind of frightening that there's no actual real questioning. And even when they say you really need to make this your own personal faith, this can't be like something you just do because your parents did it. Even then, for a lot of us, we just don't have enough information to make a real choice, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And they need you. They need to recruit you.
Yeah.
So why allow you to pause? Like, they need you to join the ranks.
And almost like pausing is almost like a illustration of your doubts. Like if you're pausing, like what's the problem? Are you doubting that God's real, or he's, you know, that the Bible's true? It's amazing how it works. When you look at this, you know, one of the things that I think for a lot of us becomes really a big piece of this, and you kind of touched on a little bit, but these moments of emotion, these moments of you feel unworthy, they start to get really deep for a lot of us as we realize through the pastor's preaching that there are some core major doctrines that are kind of becoming the structures, like the pillars of our faith. And eventually you go from just being like, I know the stories, like I know, you know, Daniel in the lion's den, I know Jonah and the fish, I know all these stories, to more of a systematic theology perspective, where like I know the core doctrines, the fundamentals of the faith, things like sin and God's divine grace and eternal judgment. And you get this sense, everything from, you know, the whole ologies, you know, the end times ology, the angelology, bibliology, all these things in the Bible college, they become bigger and bigger pieces to you as you grow up and you become a teenager, and you kind of put the pieces together and you think, I'm making this faith mine, but to do so, I have to understand, like, what are the real pillars and the structures. And when you're in this thing we call Christianity, they're really presented as absolute, undeniable truths. And so your goal is not to in any way question them, it's just understand them. And so you're not in any perspective judging this worldview. You're just absorbing it and saying, I need more, I need more, I need more. And again, eventually, when you get to the point where you're truly making it your own and you're on fire for the Lord, you've set the stage for this permanent compliance to the authority of the Bible, and you've got this feedback loop going on where your beliefs are reinforced by the emotions, by the behaviors, by the community, and by your own experience of just feeling like God is present and doing things. And you know, I think for a lot of us, it ends up coming out as like this very sin-centered identity where everything is about the sin part of it. I need to be saved myself from the sin, even these minor infractions. You're never enough for God's love, but God loves you anyway, despite yourself. There's so much, there's eternity at stake. There's this good and evil battle going on. You know, God wants you to change your behavior to align with him, so you're willing to bow your knee. This fear-based compliance stuff, and this urgency to spread it, to say everyone else needs to know the good news. And when you mix all this together, especially the core doctrines of original sin, salvation by grace, the inerrancy of Scripture, the authority of the church, and all that, you really get to a point where this is a system. And I've said before many times, you were a cog in a wheel of a system, and this was something that was done to you, and they need to recruit you, like you said. When did you first start to really feel like you were seeing through the lens of these Christian doctrines, where it wasn't just stories anymore? These were official teachings that you had aligned to. And like, how would you say it affected your identity as you began to really reflect on, like, not just the fact that God's out there and that this is a good book, but that he wants me to align with specific teachings?
Tim, you just totally stressed me out talking about all that doctrine.
I'm still in preacher mode. I haven't finished. I got more to get out.
I don't even know where to start with that. I feel like I'm getting an identity now, Tim. Like, I'm discovering it now.
Yeah.
I wasn't even, it was always, it was a trajectory. You know, like one example is, you're not even safe to feel things, you're not even safe to feel attraction for people around you. So like, you know, middle school, high school, there's this shame because there's so many invisible doctrines to care about that this is surely wrong for me to be feeling something. You're not even safe to ponder what you're thinking and feeling.
Did you feel like the idea of like, I want to get married, and even the implication, like, you know, I actually really do want to have sex too and have pleasure and, you know, have babies, whatever. But just even if you just phrased it like, I just want to get married, did that feel too worldly to you at all?
No, I needed to hurry up and get married so that I could not feel shame about attraction anymore.
Okay.
Marriage was a safe place to run so that I could feel what I wanted to feel.
It's interesting that you say that, because I know where this is a little side rabbit trail, but a lot of people, myself included, felt like marriage was the other way, where it was a distraction from the calling of God. And
which
it
is
was
what
almost,
Paul says.
Yeah, which is what Paul says. But it's almost like, if you really need that, go for it. But like, understand that God really would prefer your focus be completely on him. And I always felt like, you know, that attraction side of it was like a test. And I constantly felt like I was failing because I wanted it so much.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Again, your reality is horseshit. Let me tell you, sit down and shut up and let me tell you how it really is, Tim. Just awful, tragic.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, that you ran to marriage. Yeah. Part of me psychologically, I certainly wanted it, just in the romantic side of it. I longed for that beauty, but at the same time, I felt guilty. I felt guilty thinking, why won't I let God be enough? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The shame will get you whichever way.
Yeah. Come or going. When you look back at some of the doctrines, I think we talked a little bit about, you know, the worthlessness thing, the sin issue, but were there any other doctrines that you would say were particularly harmful to you that you look back at and just say, that did a number on me?
Well, my crowd, I've told you, my crowd is kind of like, don't focus on the doctrines too much. Just come away with the overall general good feeling that God cares about us and whatever. So, just the biggest doozy for me was, shortly after COVID, I was the Paul Washer, like, well, what? Original sin? I'd never, he doesn't even call it original sin, but that sense of like, because before growing up, it was, we make mistakes, but it's okay. And Paul Washer hits you with, no, you're a piece of trash. Like straight up a piece of trash. That really drove me into my last few years of radical, extreme Christianity. So that's the biggest one that comes to mind, is just how depraved I supposedly am.
Yeah. And I think too, when you really start that in childhood, I know you're saying you caught it a little bit later, but for a lot of us, it was just from day one. When it's really drilled into you from childhood, and it's just an assumption, it almost becomes like it's a given, of course, like duh, we're all that way. We're all in the same boat. But you really do get to a point where you don't see what it's doing. It's almost like it's like you're in a prison, and you can't get out, but you can't see the bars either, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird how that works, where it's like you have blinders on, but you don't think you do. Or you're in a cave, like, you know, Plato's cave. You see the shadows on the wall dancing from the fire, and you think that's reality, and it's just not. But you don't see it. And I think one of the things that I'll add for my story that got me really caught up in stuff was really digging into angels and demons. It wasn't a huge part of my church world. We talked about it a little bit, but it was more just like information. But you remember the name Frank Peretti?
Yes, I have those books in the other room.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing for anyone that hasn't read those. You know, please don't, unless you're all the way out. But those books get you where they're describing it as if like if you could just like see there's an angel and a demon right above you fighting, they're sword fighting above you. And that minute that you think a lustful thought or whatever, it's basically the demon is winning. And the minute that you're victorious, the angel's winning. And of course, anytime anything really bad happens, such as some horrible accident, a whole bunch of demons came and 10-1 outnumbered the angels, and there was just no way for the angels to win. And you get that sense that like life is scary. Like if you could see reality is much more scary than you ever imagined. Like almost like you don't want to know. Enjoy your little blissful reality of not seeing the spiritual side of it, because if you did, you would be horrified and you would think to yourself, I'm in so much more danger than I realize. And you would obviously, of course, run to the cross. You'd cling to your Bible more than ever. And I think those kind of things, they just, again, going with our theme, they make it more of an obsession for you. You're just like, I have to stay close to God because I cannot not have his protection. I need to have this shelter. I need to have his guidance. I need to know that I'm covered. And without the covering of the Holy Spirit and so forth, my life is basically just me and sin getting ready to destroy myself. And I think for me too, when you look at the path I took going towards a pastoral degree, wanting to be a pastor, in the pastoral epistles, it talks about your life being shipwrecked. And that, when you're in the pastoral classes, the preacher boy classes, as we said at Bob Jones, when you're a preacher boy and they keep warning you, you better have your life in order. Your life will be shipwrecked. Stay close to God. And that drive, that passion, like you are one slip up away, maybe not from hell, but you're one slip away from being that pastor who had an affair with his secretary. You're one slip up from being the bad guy. And no one will ever look at you again and say his life exemplifies the glories of the gospel, the glories of what God can do in transformative ways. That is the person that exemplifies what sin does. It just destroys. And you have this example. And I remember when I was a young child being in this church where it wasn't a pastoral issue, but this young girl who was probably like 16 or 17, she got up in front of the church and confessed, I slept with another boy and I'm pregnant out of wedlock. And they made her apologize to the whole church. And that hit that I've never forgotten that like, if you slip up, you will have to admit and confess, to the most embarrassing things you've ever done in front of the whole church. And, of course, the church acts like, oh, we're so proud of you for confessing your sins. And you're going to be on the straight and narrow from this point, and you won't be having sex again until you're married. And, of course, you're going to raise your child to love the Lord. But, you get the real strong sense in the early stage that you are this close from a horrible life. Stay close to God. Stay obsessed, and it'll be okay.
You keep stressing me out, Tim. Yes, exactly. And that I'm getting a picture of like, stay close to God up here on this ledge, or else you're falling into the pit. Like black and white, like extreme. Are you either going to be up here or are you going to slip down here? But meanwhile, in the middle here, there is space for, I don't know, healthy sexual education and healthy, like learning to emotionally regulate yourself in healthy ways. That's where reality can be. If they would have allowed us to live in reality, like that 16-year-old up in front of the church, first of all, it's none of their damn business, but like, what about coming alongside a youth and talking to them about dealing in healthy ways with attraction, dealing in healthy ways with urges, healthy sexual education, like, oh my gosh, I just heard so much wrong, so yeah, extremes, be close to God or you're fucking screwed. And
yeah.
And now as an adult, almost 40 years old, I'm learning all the different ways that I can be right here in healthy ways, moving along through life. That's tragic.
I was going to go into another point, but I wanted to just add one more thing that what you just said made me think of, if it's okay. And I also wanted to go to some comments. But one of the things that I hear sometimes from people, I don't hear it too much, but I've heard it at times from time to time, and it's very intense, where you get the sense that people who are Christians would say, if this isn't true, if this worldview isn't true, I don't know that I'd want to live in the world you live in. I would not want to live in an atheist world. If atheism were true, I wouldn't want it to be true. And it's so insidious how they get this into you, that not only is this mythology true, but it's the best life ever, but also it's so critical, not just that it's better than other worldviews, but it's really the only worldview. And if this somehow isn't true, that life is just beyond utterly meaningless, and there's nothing to hope for, there's nothing to believe in, there's nothing to work toward. Your life is basically just basically a blip on the radar. And in some ways I get that. Nihilism does in some ways imply a lot of that, but it doesn't mean that you don't have any meaning that you can create in your life. And it doesn't mean life isn't incredibly beautiful. And I would argue, of course, for me, my life has gotten much, much, much more beautiful since escaping Christianity, because you realize you were about to spend your entire life not living, not being yourself, not even knowing yourself. And so to think I've got at least some time left to be myself and to figure out, what I want to do with my life without these blinders of Christianity, it just feels so wonderful. You feel like you've got a fighting chance. You're leaving that cave, you're leaving the shadows, and you're seeing the sunrise for the first time. But for them, it's like, if I can't stay with these shadows on the wall in the cave, if all I've got is this beautiful sunrise and sunset and the glories of the stars, and then, if I can't have my shadows on the cave, then life is meaningless. It's such a sick thing that it does to you. And I've seen it come out in different ways. I don't want to dwell on it too much for this one, but it's amazing to me. And I think a lot of people still struggle with that maybe they know intellectually it's not true, but they still struggle with the idea that this was your all in all. Mm-hmm. And especially when you feel like he's your personal savior, he's your father. And he's, it's like the universe has wrapped you up in its loving arms. And it isn't this cold Star Wars force. It is very, very loving. It is the biggest teddy bear hug in the world. And he is so safe, and he's so loving, and he cares about you, and he's got a plan for you. And then you get the rug pulled out from under you, and you're like, none of that's true. There's no plan. There's no safety net. And you're like, but I want a safety net, but I want a hug from the universe. And it's like, I know you want one, but you're not going to get it. It's not there to give. And it's this weird place that people end up in. And sometimes people struggle with it because, even go into Carol's comment at the very beginning. Carol talked about, I feel like God, I feel a need that only God can fill. I'm back to the cage. And Carol, that was a great way to put it. But for a lot of us, even when we're done with that worldview, we still emotionally feel like that's part of us. We feel this sadness of like, damn it, I wanted it. And especially for me, like when I mix that with heaven, like, I wanted the father figure to love me, and I wanted to feel acceptable and beloved, and someone to just say, you're awesome, not because necessarily of you, but you're awesome because I've made you awesome. I've declared you worthy. I'm going to make you worthy. I'm going to make you shine. And I will say, well done, good and faithful servant. But also, I've got the best present ever to give you. I want to give you heaven. And you can't even imagine how beautiful it's going to be. And like C.S. Lewis, every day will get better than the next. Every chapter will get better than the next. And all of a sudden, and none of it's ever been true. And there's a lot of pain that happens when you leave that obsession, because the obsession wasn't just an emotional, this is my passion, this is what I do, this is who I am. I am a Christian. I am a follower of Christ. I am a child of the King, of the living God. I am headed to heaven. And when that's gone, it's like, holy shit. What do I do now?
Yep. Again, all I can see is heaven, hell. Oh, I can't even fathom anything in the middle, right? God, atheism. Nope. If there's a middle, then screw that. I don't, it has to be God. It has to be heaven. And then these things end up shattering for people like you and me. They shatter. They don't make sense anymore. Our brain, it doesn't make sense to our brain anymore. And then we're forced to try to make sense in the middle here. And it's a struggle.
It is. And I think as much as how should I say it? I'm glad for the people that didn't get into it, that were the Christmas and Easter Christians. I'm glad that it didn't hurt them so much. I'm so glad that they got out. But for those of us that would say, Like when I was a Christian, I would have judged them. I would have said, you're not really on fire for the Lord. You
Okay.
may not even be saved. So obviously that was bizarre in terms of my perception of them then. Now I'm just so glad they weren't obsessed about it. But for those of us that were, I hope that those on the outside that either weren't Christians or that were what I would have called a nominal Christian, a progressive Christian, that you can look at people like us and say, yeah, that's some sick ass stuff you were in. I don't know why you didn't get out earlier, granted, but still we were in it. We were indoctrinated so thoroughly and so heavily that when we finally did escape, there was no way for this not to be an absolute house of cards that was crashing down. This was a million dominoes that got tipped over and started collapsing into each other. And you don't get over that quickly. And in some ways it's a lifelong process to undo it. Obviously that we're still glad at least we have the chance. I'd rather have the fighting chance than not, but it's and the people have said to me, and I think this is a great point. They've said, you claim that you weren't very traumatized in church because you loved it so much. But, I think it's a great point that they make to say, just because you loved it, just because you loved Jesus and you loved the gospel and you loved your salvation, that doesn't mean it wasn't trauma. It was just a trauma that you were taught to love.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a trauma bond or whatever they call it. This was you being in love with your captor. This was Stockholm syndrome. Just because they beat the shit out of you with these doctrines and taught you to love the doctrines and call them, I mean, we literally talked about the glories of the gospel all the time in Calvinism, the glories of the gospel. This was so glorious. And when you're taught to see abuse as love, you do enjoy it. You do ask for another shot of, you do want another, hit of you're worthless, but God. That makes you feel good. But it is abuse. It is abuse.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts you want to add to that, I'll give you a second to think about it, and then I'm going to just read some comments here, and then we'll jump after that into the next point here. Let's see here. Wow, I got a lot of comments that I didn't get to. Let's see here. Kelsey, so true. Now out of reality never came into the equation. Yeah, reality never comes in the equation. You just, because you think you have reality.
Not a lot.
Love how supportive you are, Kenny. Absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much, Kenny, for being part of this. And Suzanne, again, songs were my journey, and I sang all day, every day, and that's the void even my children missed. Yeah. And it's, again, the songs, these are the songs of Zion. The songs of Zion, they put a smile on our face. They make us feel like home. Abuse feels like home in this worldview. The words of the songs hit so differently now.
Ugh.
Trying to find secular songs now all the time. Now I even got one song I've written another. Yeah, Susanna's written a song. Susanna, if you want to pop the link into the comments, feel free. We'd love to hear it. Mark on Spotify and iTunes. Yep. And let's see here. Yes, Kelsey, I want my 47.5 years back too. Absolutely. I wish I could go back. Although I will say, we're all always going to say that I want my time back. I wish I could go back and be young again and rethink this. But, in some ways, if the chips hadn't landed the way they did in my life, I wouldn't have escaped. The chips landed the way that they did in a way that made my life exponentially painful. I had so many things that were so painful that made me simply think, God, what are you doing in this situation? I clearly said I wanted to go to the mission field, and you clearly have said, why are none of you willing to go? And I said, I'll go, send me. And then you slam the door in my face with the severe insomnia and other issues. It's just like, God, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And for so many of us, it's those, it's like, that isn't enough to help us escape. It's just enough to make the wheels turn. We have to get into the mythology. We have to get into questions of, is the Yahweh character really loving? Other things like that. But it's enough to at least make us think and say, does this make sense? Like, if God is our good father, where is he? Why isn't he protecting us? Why is life so painful all the time? And we've really, in some ways, set ourselves up for, a cosmic Santa Claus, and it's to our fault.
You know what's interesting?
Go for it.
It's almost like some of us had to go into the belly of the beast and really sell out, go bankrupt for this thing, put all our chips down on this thing, and really learn all the ins and outs so that we could come to a place where we're like, no, y'all can't tell me nothing anymore. None of this makes sense. Right? Because if you are just Christmas and Easter, it remains sort of mysterious, right? And you're able to keep looking up at the pastor or the priest, and they've got so much more knowledge than I do. So who am I to question that, this doesn't seem to make sense. That doesn't seem to make sense. That's what I still find when I talk to people who seem really neutral, where some of them are like, but church can teach morality and can get, and like, no, we can't. No, but they stay neutral because they haven't gone into the belly of the beast themselves, like doctrinally, theologically, looking at the mythology. They haven't done the work, so they can't be convinced, absolutely convinced as we are, that like, no, like I've gone into the belly and found that it's bullshit. So it's almost like it was necessary. Yes, like it was necessary to take our journeys, because like if I started my life outside of this cultish thinking and was able to stay outside of it, could I come to this age and somebody comes to my door and gives me a little of the gospel and I start to fall for it because I never figured it out myself? So I guess, you want the time back, but some of us really needed to figure it out and just figure out for ourselves that we were done.
Yeah. And I think it's a great illustration too of the larger cultural shifts that are going on. I know we're currently facing the bizarro world of Trumpism and Christian nationalism, but I think this is more of a blip on the radar. In the long run, it's going to be a four years of a shit show. But then I think I think the culture in general is figuring it out. This is a step back, but we're going to move forward again over time and hopefully undo quickly some of the damage that's being done. But it's almost like this is part of the birth pangs. I remember we used to use that word a lot with was it Revelation and stuff?
Yeah.
But the birth pangs of our culture, getting to the next stage of consciousness and the next evolution of how we see the world. And I'm sure technology will play a big part of that, and AI. But we're getting past mythology. We're getting past patriarchy, and hopefully, thankfully, some of the bizarre stuff going on will help people be like, oh yeah, I voted for that asshole, but you know what? Actually, this didn't work out so well, and we've got this is actually blowing up in our faces now, and we're going to see it play out that way, I'm sure. But this is illustration of like our lives were like this angst, but then you kind of go into the beautiful next stage. Same for me, and I think our culture is in that angst of like, what do we do here? Is it mythology or isn't it? Is Jesus real or not? And we're just struggling so much as a culture to figure out what to do. And I think eventually more and more people are going to get past it. And it might be a generation or two now, but they're going to be like, they're going to launch into a much different world, and it's going to be so amazing, I'm sure. But
we'll pray for that.
Yeah, we'll pray for that. I was just going to say too, it's interesting. I'm going to use a quick illustration. I used to be a custom cabinet maker, and I used to work for a contractor where we're rough framing and everything. And it's interesting once you start to know how things are made, whether it's a house or a cabinet, or maybe you're a mechanic, you know how to put a car together, take it apart. Once you know how it's made, you also know how to unmake it. And one of the things I love to think about and say is that I knew from my time studying to be a pastor and a missionary, I knew how to build a church and how to train up, evangelize and train up believers. I knew how to do it brick by brick by brick. But that also means I know how to undo it brick by brick by brick. And I love that we are dangerous at this point. I was going to build the church, and I now know how to tear it down in a way that most people don't. And it's interesting. You think about it, there's a lot of power there. And I will absolutely be using my power. Like I say, if I've put 1,000 people into the kingdom, I'm going to take 100,000 back out. Obviously not a real kingdom. This is all an earthly kingdom of people's, arrogance and pride in our human culture. But I'm going to take people out of this worldview system because it's damaging. And in many ways, you're fighting for the next, you're fighting for the children that are going to be taking over the reins of this culture. You're fighting by fighting for their parents. When you fight for the people that are adults these days that can think through it, you invite them to the table to think through it, and then they raise their children to be secular. They raise their children free of mythology. Then our culture has a fighting chance. And just to remind people, the Christians are intent on heavily outbreeding secular people. So please keep that in mind. Children matter. Having children is a beautiful thing, and raising them to change our culture is a beautiful thing. So my little soapbox there. Let me get back to comments here. See here. Oh, let's skip one. IDK, is it? I don't know. Thanks for the insights and conversation. Thank you so much. Appreciate your being here. Steven is in the house. Everyone, please keep Steven in mind. He's been through a rough last couple months, just a lot of stuff, health issues and other things. And please, he's been a big part of our community. We appreciate him so much. So please keep him in mind. I would say pray for him, but I'm not going to say it because it's not real. But Steven, we appreciate you being here. And I know there's a lot on your plate. So hang in there. Teaching the kids to believe that crazy stuff is what really gets me mad at myself for passing along the narrative. We all learn, and some of us finally had enough of this BS. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Preach it, Stephen. Great to see you all here. And your three amigos are here. Awesome. Finger red, number one. Carol says, hi, Tim. Just as I think I'm out of Christianity, something happens, and it makes me feel alienated from the world, and only God can fill me. I've lost my soulmate and have lost him for eternity. And yes, I was obsessed with Jesus, bringing Terry with him when he came back. And this is a reason why I keep going back. Yeah. And I'm so sorry for your loss, Carol. We grieve with you. And again, please don't feel pressure from us to land where we've landed. You take it, you're one step at a time, wherever you feel is right for you. There's no right answer. But there's a lot of wrong answers. But this is a hard thing, and you need to take it to the point where you feel like you can deal with it. I would just encourage you again to as you're ready to address the two big questions in my mind: is Yahweh a good character, or is he a psychopath? And is the Bible full of mythology or not? You add in a whole bunch of other things, but start there, because those two questions will make a big difference, and it did for me. So, by the way, Kelsey, if I'm just jumping through these real quick because we got a lot backlogged here, but if you want to jump in any questions or comments, feel free. I don't want to.
I was also going to encourage therapy with a non-Christian therapist. They can help you grieve, in very human ways, and completely exclude divine characters and mythology from it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Yeah, and maybe too on the lower level, just try to surround yourself with a community that'll say the same thing, but your friends that will walk with you and just help you to feel like you're loved, because Christianity really does deprive you of the chance to grieve appropriately, because they kind of give you this false hope of like, it's not really a loss. You're going to see him again in a few years. Heck, you might have a car accident tomorrow and you'll be with him again tomorrow. It's like, would you guys please stop? I'm grieving a real loss and it hurts. And stop saying it's not a real loss. It's a real loss and it hurts. Christianity doesn't really do that for you. And you need to, when we embrace reality bites. It really, really does. But it's better than pretending. It's better than, giving ourselves these placebos that in reality are actually not, they're just Band-Aids. They're not fixing the cancer. Susanna says, I'm the same Kelsey, finding my identity now in my 5th year. Yep. Susanna's a beautiful woman tonight. Yep, absolutely. Susanna's so great. We're so appreciative of her being part of our community. Absolutely, Carol. Appreciate you being here. Paul Washer made so many. Let's see here.
So much sense.
So much sense. Yeah. Paul Washer made so much sense when you were neck deep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and absolutely. It'll preach. It'll preach. And especially that one, what's that one quote? You're so wicked that, when if you're going to hell, that, when you leave the earth or something, the angels will all rejoice that you're gone. There are verses where it talks about God is going to execute judgment and justice at some point. And it says that we will look on the corpses of the people that he has struck down, and we will rejoice. We will rejoice when he's at the corpses.
That is so nice and loving.
And what's that verse? Blessed are those who dash our enemies' babies' heads against the rock. Oh. I mean, Christianity and Judaism, there are sick worldviews, incredibly sick worldviews. These texts are not good. It doesn't make any sense why we're still embracing them. But yeah, when you're in it, you're like, God's gotta at some point get violent. And I remember C.S. Lewis. Did you ever read his space trilogy?
No. What?
He wrote the Narnia Chronicles, but he wrote this space trilogy about a man named Ransom. And in the last one, he gets transported to a different planet that's basically at this Adam and Eve stage, where there's an Adam and an Eve, and they've just met, and Ransom has been, somehow God has orchestrated to give Ransom the ability to make a rocket ship to go land on this planet and to see the beginning of the next, this other planet's Adam and Eve, and he's there. It's just totally new. The world is new. They're different, but it's basically your Adam and Eve story. Their rule is that they have these floating islands, and God does not want you to live on the fixed lands. He wants you to live on the floating islands. And if you go on the fixed lands during the daytime, it's fine. But when you go to your home and you go to sleep, you sleep on the floating islands. That's the rule. And this Satan character comes and is trying to tempt out of the Adam and Eve of that story. That's not really good. Like, the fixed lands are so wonderful. You're not floating. You're not moving. And this guy Ransom is debating the whole time, how do I get this Adam and Eve to just obey God? Just, will you not see it? And they're so naive that they don't understand the philosophies. And he basically is sitting there constantly debating with Adam and Eve philosophically, trying to debate with this devil character to try to get him to stop. And eventually Ransom is like, what the hell am I doing? Just get a knife and just kill him. Literally just kill him. And so at the end, he's like, it wakes him up. Like, I've been spending all my time trying to convince Adam and Eve to do the right thing and the devil to stop. It's like, just get a fucking knife and kill this guy. And so it's like, violence is sometimes necessary in this worldview. And that's right out of the text. Go find God's enemies and kill them. That's what it says. And you get that message that a lot of Christians are like, I'm sorry, but that's where this is going to go. And
so
honestly,
God
I think
was the wrong person 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
gosh.
It's insane. It's really insane. Elizabeth, when I was a child, I was so scared of demons in the dark. It was horrible. Yeah, that's a big deal. We didn't go into the deep, but yeah, that's when you tell kids there's demons in the dark, the boogeyman in the closet. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
In the dark. That was terrifying to me.
Yeah, it's awful. Dodato's Diary, great to see you. Please, everyone, go like and subscribe. She's doing great work there as well. And I have an interview with you as well. So please do check that out. And but doing great work there. To me, it's simple. People are obsessed because as humans, we love the mystical instead of cold, hard reality. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Religion is a way of avoiding the fact that reality is a very cold place. We want the world to feel warm and cozy and friendly and like family. And the world will kill you in a heartbeat and not care. It's very true. This is basically about a comfort blanket to the reality of life. Elizabeth says, so glad that I'm now an atheist, feeling so free. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's so much freedom once you get past the initial shock. Stephen says, so many biblical studies and an internship at a Baptist church, the lies told to the parishioners just to make money for the pastor. That's why I quit, amongst many other shelf breakers. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, some of those dynamics, especially the whole name it, claim it theology, or just the pastor getting rich off everybody. But while saying, you all just pray for God to provide, but you provide for me. Miss Anke says, I used to be that type of Christian that said I wouldn't want to live in an atheist world. Well, here I am, living freely and way less stressed. That's so awesome. So awesome. By the way, I should mention to anyone that's in the live stream that, where you obviously agree with what we stand for here, please do reach out to me if you're interested in doing an interview at some point. My Facebook page is @HarmonicTim. Again, @ the @ sign and then Harmonic Tim. Please add me as a friend and then send me a message. Let me know that you've seen the channel and you want to do an interview at some point. Let's connect. I would love to hear more and more stories. And if you don't hear from me right away, I've got a lot of backlog of people email me, but I will get back to you. I'd love to hear your story as soon as I can. That's exactly how it felt. Rug pulled, headbangs, now facing reality. Yeah, exactly. And that's why we so need people to help us through it. And eventually you get to a point where you don't care. I mean, I don't feel like I have any anxiety much more about my deconversion apart from the heaven issue, but everything else is pretty much a non-issue for me in many ways. But yeah, at the beginning, you just feel like, what in the world? How is this happening? Where do I go next? Carol says, why did slavery appear in 2 Peter, and what kind of slavery was it? Because it talks about cruelty. Carol, that's a good question. I'm going to save that answer for another live stream if that's okay. I do want to get back to our notes in a minute, but good question. I would say, though, just as a quick answer, there were some kinds of slavery in the Bible that did seem more like they were indentured servitude. I think most of the times we talk about it, we're talking about the nasty kind where like someone owns you and can beat you till you die, and can sell you off and sell your kids and so forth. Where it's pretty horrific. You're basically, like you're a dog, you're a piece of property to them. But there may have been some variations. But the consistent message that we often talk about is, why didn't God ever condemn slavery? Why is he not saying slavery is just wrong? It's wrong to own a person. And why is that a message that never comes through? But everything we ever hear is just submit, as opposed to pursue your freedom. And there's maybe one passage that says pursue your freedom if you can, but otherwise submit. But God never really indicates that human value is up there. It's just like there's a value to humans that are his chosen people, but everyone else is pretty much just up for grabs. Rug pull is very appropriate for today's situation. Yeah. Levi, slammed the door in my face with severe insomnia. God, what are you doing? Well, that hit home. Yeah. And I had severe insomnia for like 25 years. I blame myself for it. My pastor blamed me for it. He said, you must have sinned. I moved from Philly to Georgia for a special doctor who cured it in 1 month with no medicine. It was all left brain, right brain stuff. 25 years of thinking it was me and my sinfulness, and it wasn't at all. Crazy. IW says, sadly, it taught some of us to hate ourselves and to accept unacceptable behavior. Glad I'm out. Yeah. Insomnia is a horrible monster. Yeah, it really, really is. The Basane age was of believing. We're moving into the age of Aquarius and knowing. Yeah. I mean, I don't believe in ages like that per se, but I know what you mean where you're referencing the movements of the constellations and so forth. But yeah, we're going to be at a spot where our society in the next generation or two, I hope we won't be here to see it, but I hope that they do change and get past this stuff. You never know that. I mean, there could be a new religion coming. I mean, what's to say that a new religion won't pop into it? Maybe the cult of Trump or something, horror of horrors, who knows? There are groups of people that have people that died and they still are waiting for them. There's a group of is it Hasidic Jews, or so there's a group of Jews somewhere up in New York, I think, that still believe that they have a guy that was like their main teacher, and is like, he's going to come back soon. I forget what their names are. And there's certainly other people, the Jewish people in general are waiting for a Messiah in general. There's a lot of groups expecting something. Wouldn't it be crazy if Trump at some point passes away and then people are like, he's coming back? I mean, you never know. But
gross.
I hope that doesn't happen. But I'd love to hope with you, Stephen, that we're going to move past it. But that'll be the next generation's battle. Good morning, Daniel. Great to see you. Shannon, great to see you. I love that you are dangerous at this point. Yeah, we really are, and we have to fight. It's we're fighting for our kids. Are your kids worth it or not? Yep. Brian, great to see you. Yeah, you have to go hard. That's what she said. It's just you need to fight. You need to fight. There's a lot of things at stake here, and I'm starting I've got a channel that I haven't really done much with yet called The First Atheist President, but I'm working on some monologues. They're going to be much more political than this channel is, but I'm going to go very, very hard on that one about politics and about changing our culture. Secularism needs to be at the front and center of our fight. Deconverted from Christianity and fighting mythology, and then the path of politics. People say stay in your lane. I'm sorry, people wake up. They're the same lane. If you deconvert, politics is part of your lane. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal if you care about this world and your children. David, it's a good spell, gospel, and it works because all people who think about the world we are born have to make sense of it. It's a good spell. I'm not sure if I'm following that one, but
like they're casting a spell on you. It's a good spell.
Okay.
Because it's a way to make sense of things.
Yeah, it is. It definitely has a spell on us, doesn't it?
Yeah. For
sure. Hey, Shannon, great to see you. Solace and Tim's channel with all this dreadful political stuff happening. Yeah, thank you so much. And please do check out the First Atheist President channel. I will be doing some work there starting soon. First question is so crucial. Yeah. Love from South Africa. I'm 21. I got disowned by my parents. Oh, wow. They chose Jesus because I'm gay. Love and light. Oh, man. That's awful. That's awful. Our hearts go out to you. Please see us as your family. We love you. We affirm you, and you're safe with us. So, by the way, speaking of Africa, I did just do an interview with Leo Igwe, so on the channel, And this, for those of you that are kind of in the know, and I'm sorry, Kelsey, I'll go right back to you in a minute. But for those of you that are sort of in the know of what's been going on in the world, when I was speaking with Leo from Nigeria, we talked very briefly about a man who in Nigeria was in prison for the last, I believe it was 2 years, because he was an atheist. His name is Mubarak Bala, and he has agreed to do an interview with me. So we're going to be interviewing next week, and then I'll post it a week later. But please do check that out when it comes out. This is a man who literally was like a martyr, as it were, for rationality. He said religion isn't real, and we need to protect people like yourself. And they sent him to prison for 2 years. So thankfully he got out, but he's willing to share his story. So look for that. But we so sorry for your journey. That's awful. It seems to be a control and power game, because if you can curb people's beliefs, then you curb the way they live and the way they treat one another, which creates society. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is about control of society. Guys, please recommend atheist books. I need healing. 2 years atheist. Thank you, South Africa. I've got a whole bunch of books that would come to mind quickly, but I don't necessarily want to read them all out here. Kelsey, do you have any books that you can think of?
I don't.
Okay. If you could reach out to me privately, again, add me on Facebook at Harmonic Tim. I will try to get you some books that I would recommend. There's several books. There's books by Dan Barker. I'm just thinking more of people that wrote. Dan Barker's written some. Seth Andrews has written some, but reach out to me privately. I'll try to get a list together of at least a few that might come to mind. Brooklyn Lou the Skeptic, great to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Was just speaking with a Christian last night who was saying there's not a single thing anybody can do that is good. Book of Romans says man cannot do a single thing that is good. Total depravity. Yeah, it's nuts. And when you think that through and through, and you really believe it,
which again, like, I can go out on the street and hand a hot bowl of soup to someone who needs it, but we're going to call that not good. So very basic thinking is just hijacked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's amazing too. I don't get this too much per se, but I'm one of those people that just is like, I love saying hi to everybody. Hey, how you doing? Everyone in the grocery store knows me. Like the people that work there, they all know me. And that's like kind of what I used to pride myself on when I was a Christian. Like, I'm going to shine, make them wonder what I've got, make them wish that they were not on the outside looking in.
Don't hide it under a bushel. No.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I'm doing the same. That like, it was never Christianity. It was me. I just like to connect to people, and I like to help little old ladies across the street and help people pick stuff up when they drop stuff. Like, that's me. It wasn't Jesus in me. It was just me, but everything was like, oh, it's God in you. It's like, no. But yeah, Brooklyn, thanks so much for mentioning that. I appreciate what you're doing too. You're doing great work. Carol, the song I remember is Open My Eyes, Lord. I want to see Jesus, and the things of earth will go strangely dim. Oh, yeah. That you could put that on repeat for an hour. I'd love that song. What was, gosh, there was another one. I wish I could remember it. I've been working more on memorizing scripture again quite a bit, but I haven't been going back to old songs. But I'll come back to it. But do you remember that? So Will I. Remember that? What is that one? Give me 1 second. Let me look it up. Do you remember the song So Will I?
As soon as you say more, I feel like I will.
Oh yeah. Hillsong, God of creation there at the start before the beginning of time with no point of reference. You spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. As you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born, and the vapor of your breath the planets form. If the stars are made to worship, so will I. Oh, just that kind of stuff. So will I. So will I. If everything, if all creation obeys you, so will I. If the stars are made to worship, so will I. Oh my gosh, yeah, those kind of stuff. You get your eyes on. Whew, if you're in that mindset, that'll take you to new heights.
Yeah.
But again, Carol, remind yourself, it feels good, but it's not real. And the question is, do you want an examined life or not? The unexamined life is not worth living. David says it devalues human life and creates a complexity and identity crisis in the soul. Yeah, great.
I was diagnosed with an identity disorder once I left.
What was that like? Like, what happened?
I when I lost my faith, I went right to a psychologist and said, please check me out. Like, because I was looking at the world like through 3-year-old eyes. It felt like this was a brand new place and I don't know how to understand it. So she talked to me about an identity crisis, an adjustment disorder, and lacking very basic coping skills were her 3 diagnoses. It just bankrupts you.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's interesting that the way you said or pointed out coping skills, that we could do a whole session on that one.
Yeah, I had 0.
Yeah. What would you say, not to take us too far off track, but what would you say were some of the things that helped the most for you, sort of taking those baby steps to begin to have a way to, find your footing and all that?
One very basic thing I had to start with is sitting with my feelings, like learning to just, it's okay to feel this for a few minutes, a few hours, maybe even a few days, but like you will start to feel that go away. And you just have to experience that so that you learn and so that you rewire and realize, feelings can be all right. Thoughts can be all right. And if I keep moving through them, then they go away and I move on to other thoughts and feelings. But the ironic thing is, like, when you're stuck in faith and they keep hijacking, telling you to shove your thoughts and feelings into a closet, those thoughts and feelings just rot and you don't get to work through them and clear them out. They're just in there rotting to the side. So they're depriving you of being able to healthily move through life.
It's fascinating. It's amazing, this psychology that comes into play with this stuff. I mean, psychology is so big, and I love that so many other channels do focus on mythology and just on the academic part of it. But we definitely need to keep the psychology of this front and center too, because this, if we're going to heal, we got to understand what happened to us. This was something that was truly done to us, and it's interesting when you talk about coping mechanisms. You feel like when you're a Christian, you've got all this toolbox, like you're preparing for the world. You're preparing to be a soldier for Jesus. You've got so many tools in your toolbox for how to live your life and be righteous and to share the gospel and be strong. And you realize that you're basically left completely defenseless against the reality of this universe and the reality of the world. When you escape Christianity, they didn't give you anything, and you're starting from ground zero. And at that point, you end up really struggling for a while, because I think you feel so powerless. And also you feel like, for many of us, like no one's going to listen, no one cares. They're going to just make fun of me or ostracize me. And it takes a while for a lot of us, I think, to get to a point where you say, I am a lot stronger than I thought I was. Because you feel so weak and so lost and like so almost dizzy when this first happens to you. But to say to yourself, I can do this. I have the power. And the power, number one, to say no to bad ideas, but the power to proceed towards good ideas. They deprive you of the ability to trust in yourself, to rely on yourself, and to say to yourself, maybe for the first time, I am my best friend. I am powerful. I can make the choice that feels right to me, even if the world stands against me. That takes a lot of guts. And boy, some of you in this community, and the communities I interact with, you're so brave. And as much as it's sort of stating the obvious here, that bishop that just stood up to Trump, obviously she's a progressive Christian of sorts, but she's so brave. Bishop Marianne Booty, she was so brave to do what she did, to stand up to Trump, and it takes a lot of bravery to stand up against this worldview. It really does, because it feels like it's you against not just your church, but against the whole culture and against the God of the universe. And you realize, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have, even though I know he's not there and I'm not giving God the finger, it feels like you're giving God the finger, and it feels like you're damning yourself to hell in the process. And as much as it's mythology, it still feels so uncomfortable at first. But to take your power back, step by step, and eventually,
fire in your belly.
Yeah, eventually you get to a point where you're like, I have no choice. I must
There's no
I
choice.
must move on from this. Christians would be gung-ho about waging war on Iraq after 9/11. Yeah, Christians are so warmongering. It's amazing. The warmongering that Christians have is intense. Yep, Yahweh is evil for sure. I wanted to interview, want to build my channel a little bit more than an interview. Yep, sounds good. Reach out whenever the time is right, and that goes for anybody. For some people, it's just an issue of timing, but definitely reach out when the time is right. If you have a channel that I can point people to, that's even better. I suffered from insomnia for about 25 years, and the doctor that cured it, it was a great doctor down here in Georgia. He said, I can cure that in one month with no medicine. I said, I've been on medicine for 25 years. There's no way. He said, I can do it. And he did about 3 hours of the weirdest tests, spinning me in chairs with cameras, looking at my eyes, and bizarre tests. You think this guy's a quack. A month later, after 25 years, I could sleep. No medicine, not a drop of medicine. Crazy stuff. If anyone has had something like that, if it's not apnea, mine was not apnea, but if you have an issue with insomnia that's not apnea, feel free to reach out, and I'll be glad to give you this information. And maybe it'll help. Maybe you can find a doctor like him in your area. Let's see here. All religions, some same scam, different wizards. Yeah, a great way to put it. Same scam, different wizards. Pastors are even worse. They say that God prospering you is contingent on you giving money to them. If you don't tithe and enrich the church, God will never prosper you. Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah, that almost like. Did you ever have the sense, Kelsey, like that if you, almost like a 1-for-1, if you skip your devotions today, you're going to have a bad day? Did you ever have like this that immediate 1-to-1, like you literally will pay for this?
Not immediate, but I saw that as being residual. Like if I keep missing these, I'm going to pay for it like sin wise, or I'm going to pay for it spirituality wise. I saw it residual. Like, don't let that happen too much. Like get back in it. But it wasn't like 1-for-1 type of thing.
I remember in Bible college, somebody admitted that it was like in a group or some discussion. They said, yeah, I'll just be honest. I haven't been in the Word of God this week at all, like all week long. I remember later on being with other friends when that person wasn't present, and they're like, they just admitted that they weren't in the Bible this week. Like, no wonder they had such a bad week. They were clearly grumpy all week. They clearly had a nasty week. No wonder they weren't in the Bible all week. It just makes sense. And this was really weird, but they used to use the phrase spanking from God, and it was kind of like tongue in cheek, but it was kind of not. It was like if something bad, you got in a little car accident, it's just a fender bender. It's going to cost you $500. You're not going to need a new car, but God wasn't like destroying you, but it was like a little spanking from God. Like, I want you to do the right thing here, and I will get you. It's like
a little slap on the back of the head.
Yeah, it's like this little mob boss.
Straighten up.
It's crazy. Mine was cured through left brain, right brain stuff. Again, reach out to me if you want to. Probably I'll give you the information. But left brain, right brain stuff was my path to being cured from insomnia. Scientology is a weird cult a lot of people get into. Yeah, I haven't done any interviews, I don't believe, but Myth Vision has some. I've seen those with Derek Lambert. He's doing great work. Please support him as well. But yeah, that's a weird one. What I don't get is how some churches convince people with mental illness to get off the medications. Yeah, churches should not be in the business of telling people what to do with medications, or even honestly just giving people counseling. Pastors, even if they've been through some kind of certification, if a pastor has a mythology-based worldview, they are disqualified from counseling anybody about anything. They really are. Not Christianity, but all religions should be separated out of government, in my opinion. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can have something a private belief, but yeah, if you bring it into the government, agreed. We need a secular society. Really do. See here, I'm going to go quicker here for the sake of time. I'd like to get through one more point in our notes here, but let me see if I can catch up here on comments here in the next 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know how to share my song. Not sure if the link worked. Let's see here. Gotcha. Susanna, I'll have you on a live stream soon. We'll make sure we'll get the link ready for that one for the next time. No worries. Hey, Tim, I wanted to say you really helped me during my deconversion. Leaving the faith was so scary at first, but your general approach helped me realize it was the best decision. Thank you so much. I feel honored to be part of people's journeys, and every bit of it is my hope that I can take what I've been through and what I've learned and be able to give people a gentler path out, and to let them know there's people on the other side that care about you. There's a community here, because a lot of it's about loss of community, which is our next point to get to. See here. Yep. Susanna, definitely. If you find that link, feel free to pop it in, but otherwise we'll have it for the next live stream when we'll bring you on here. Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot by Seth Andrews. Yeah, that's a great book. Let's see here. Yeah, religious trauma syndrome is real, for sure. See here, Tira says, "Oh my God, I'm watching at the beginning. The Father Abraham song took me back." Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But this journey is definitely one of being triggered. So
Yeah.
if you're in the process of healing, be prepared to be triggered. The brain is like a supercomputer. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's for sure. You can program it. Yeah, it looks like even someone used that word. Yeah, you can program it. If you program it to believe in something, it will. It's crazy. Sort of like AI. It's amazing when you look at how much with AI they're like training it on different models, and it's if it was trained on a completely different model, it would have a different output. But yeah, we're definitely being trained on the model of Christianity. They're like wizards, aren't they? I've been through Christianity, Wicca, and I've observed Muslim faith believers. There is a pattern for sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of little consistent messages. Someone's got the truth, the exclusive truth, and the way to life, everlasting, etc. And for the low price of 10%, they'll help you to get there. I wasn't part of churches that did Awana, or however you say it, but I homeschooled and remembered other families using Awana. I began to learn to run from them. Yeah, Awana and other groups like it, they just, it's all fun and games. You get the little jacket, you get the little pins and stuff, but you're basically memorizing verses that say you're a sinner that needs Jesus. Ditto from me, religious syndrome. He helped me so much. Is that RS? I think I don't think that actually is religious syndrome. What am I thinking? What would be RS? What would that stand for? I'm not sure, Kristen, what that is. Feel free to clarify that. I'm sorry. I'm pulling a blank here. It would be an honor to be on your podcast. And yep, Stephen, absolutely. We'll do an interview at some point as well. I'd love to hear your story. It's so cold and empty. Yeah. Christianity really is. It's and thank you, Tim. You've helped me. Absolutely. And again, please feel free when you can take Kelsey's path and create a channel. Please do. Let me know. And by the way, this is the interview that I did with Kelsey. I posted the link before for her channel. Please go like and subscribe. But there's also on my channel a video we did where we talked through her story in more detail. But we've caught up with comments. I'd like to be able to do one more point here, and then we'll wrap up for today. And let's see here. Where did we leave off? The next thing we're going to talk about in terms of how Christianity becomes an obsession was community reinforcement. When you're talking about this idea of there's these shared cultural experiences, this sense of security and acceptance. These are your people. This is your authority. The people you love that love you, they demand conformity to the group norms, of course, but they're norms that you grow to love, and you want them from other people as well. They feel safe. They're giving you this safeguard against the doubts. They're isolating you, of course, from the outside external perspectives. They're giving you validation. You participate in these different things, church, volunteer activities, missions trips, and you get praised, of course. You give your testimony. God did something. I believed him and he provided. Praise the Lord. All this stuff, the accountability structures, weekly small groups, your church attendance, your prayer, the collective worship. You end up getting a real strong sense that you belong somewhere. This is your family. How did that play out for you, Kelsey? What was it like in terms of the obsession side of it? What part did church play to make you even more obsessed in your relationship with God?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is and it's the reason that I don't love when my children ask to go to church with their grandparents, is just something so basic as walking into a place and seeing all these people who are friendly and smiling, and your mood is lifted a little bit, and you're looking and you're calculating. You're like, okay, all these people are gathering around this story about me being awful and needing a guy to die for me. We're all gathering around, everyone's bustling around, they're giving donuts and coffee. This is really nice. And we're all agreeing that a burning bush spoke to that guy and I'm supposed to care about that. You know what I mean? Even just being there and seeing all these people participating, it reinforces the obsession. I guess this is real. I guess this is life. So that's a very basic thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. Were you involved in a lot of like small group things too? Where did you go to small group Bible studies a lot?
Oh yeah, and I tried to graduate to actually leading them.
Hmm.
Yeah, and Beth Moore was one of my faves. If you were putting on a Beth Moore Bible study, I was there. I loved her. Oh, I thought she would be a blast to just sit and have coffee with and talk with for hours. Yeah, and just so there's that lure of like, all right, let's get in deep, and we can make sense of this together. As long as we're together and we're all agreeing that fish swallowed that guy, okay, then all right, who am I to question? Who am I to, so yeah, it's ever present.
It's amazing to me how these things work, and I feel like for so many of them, it's this mixture where you look back at it now and you say it was about control, but at the time it was such a comfort, and this was your family, this was your home. And I remember I had a situation. For the sake of time, I won't elaborate on it now, but I remember at one point thinking to myself, especially like going into missions, that I really need to stay in this community's good graces, because they're literally going to be my supporters and my support group and my helpers and how I send out my messages. I need them to support me when I go do overseas missions, because I want to plant a church in a jungle environment and a tribe. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder how many missionaries like just at some point piss off their pastor, and their pastor just suddenly stops like caring about them as much and pushing them. And all of a sudden, like, you're like, this is how you stay in the tribe. This is how you continue to do your missions work, is your church cares about you. Like, I wonder what that's like. And I remember distinctly thinking, if I ever like lost their respect, it would be really bad. And so something happened. Again, I'll tell that story another time. I've told it before, but something happened. And I remember the pain of thinking, these people don't respect me too much anymore. And it wasn't about deconversion, about something else. But I remember it being such a painful thing to think, I don't think these are people aren't going to be on the same side as me. They're not people that are going to champion me anymore in the same way. And it was so painful. But when you're in it and you're like, you think these are my cheerleaders, I'm cheerleading on them, they're cheerleading on me, we're championing each other. You get to a point where you think, like, this is the way it should be. These are my brothers and sisters. This is my family. And it's such a comfort. And you lose sight of the control factor. You really do.
Yeah. I mean, it's not control. It's just how things need to go in order to honor God. Now I can really see how all that community, all that support, all those relationships were not ever interested in authentic Kelsey, authentic Tim. Like, if authentic Kelsey wants to come into the church with something that the community doesn't agree with, it's not about caring about Kelsey and, oh, this is how Kelsey wants to live her life, this is how Kelsey thinks and feels. Okay, we love her and we embrace. No, you're not allowed. There is no such thing as authentic anyone. And if you're going to come into our community and act like you're allowed to be authentic, of course they don't consciously, you're not even thinking about authenticity. That's not even a word, right? But like subconsciously or unconsciously, the community is, you best not be thinking you can come through those doors as an authentic person. Don't you think that you can talk how you want to talk, think how you want to think. And so none of it's conscious. It's all subconscious and unconscious. They're communicating that to you, and then you're coming in with your tail between your legs. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
If I can use the word obsessive in a little different sense than what we've been using it, it's interesting how what you're referring to there, it makes me think too that we get obsessive about the levels to which we can be authentic, because in many ways we can't be our genuine selves. But you do sometimes get these little pockets of people, like these small group Bible studies, or, women's groups, men's groups, and you get the sense you can take your mask off a little bit. And it's interesting how you almost become obsessive about trying to figure out which role to play. You become obsessive about how much do I share about my struggles. And I remember, I've said this before, but when I was at Bible college, the men's groups always start out with prayer, read some scripture. It always ends up with, I just am really struggling so much this week, which is Christianese, male Christianese for I was masturbating this week. And that's the way it always works. Like I struggled so much this week. That means, I masturbated, or at least I lusted. And I'm talking about preacher boys. I'm talking about men who are in line to become an assistant or primary pastor of a church within 3 to 5 years. And they know that they're spending all day on these 2 different tracks. One of them is theology and ministry and the God and gospel and all these things for the church. And they're secretly thinking about all these lustful thoughts, and they hate themselves for it. The Romans 6-7 kind of stuff. I hate myself. This is the man of flesh warring against the spirit. But you're thinking to yourself, you're obsessing about Christ. You're obsessing, yes, about the Lord and the gospel and your walk with him. But you're also obsessing about, when do I share my real self? Because for the most part, in almost every pocket, like you're never going to get up in front of a group of people, your church, and say, I'm struggling with masturbation this week to your 300 congregants. Like, you're going to get run out of town for saying that. You wouldn't say it in a mixed group with men and women. You wouldn't probably even say it to the pastor, the older 60-year-old pastor that's mentoring you, because he's like, you're struggling with that. And it's amazing. But then you get to these little small groups where you can be honest about your struggles, and it's all about your mask. And for a lot of people, it truly does get down to, which mask do I wear today? Or I remember in church, there was so much peer pressure at certain times, and I'm sure your church had this from what you said, like, if you're raising your hands, then you're on fire. But if your hands are down, then they're not. You're not on fire. Or else maybe you're grieving your sin. Maybe like, I want to be on fire, but I'm more in a grieving my sin phase today. Yeah. But if you were really on fire, even in a conservative church, you'd be like, raising your hand a little bit, or at least palms up, and sort of like this receiving mode.
Come on.
Yeah. But you end up having these different masks, and you're trying to get some kind of dopamine of, I hope they think good of me today. I hope they think that I'm a good person or spiritual. And man, oh man, the community in church, you can get lucky. You can have their kind of personality that just says, "Oh, screw them. I don't care what you think. It's just between me and God ultimately." But for most people that I've encountered, they are constantly thinking, who is thinking what about my relationship with God? Am I spiritual enough? And your obsession does become this dual thing of like, I'm obsessed with God, but I'm obsessed with how people see me in my relationship with God. And that'll kill you. And you'll spend your whole Christian life thinking you're thinking about God, and you're actually thinking about, what do people think about me and God?
That's huge. That is, just drop the mic right there and we'll just be done. That's huge. I think I'm there, but post deconversion, I have sensed that, where I'm like, letting go of worrying about what people think about me. Of course, not in the church environment now. Now it's just in general, like at work, I'm worrying about what that person thinks of me or what like it really takes hold, how obsessed you can be about worrying about what other people think of you. I'm unloading that still.
Yeah. It's funny the way you put that. I've actually got a monologue I'm working on, which is specifically about this. And it basically says, I really hope you're not thinking about what other people think of you. Because when you leave Christianity, you really need to develop a thick skin. Like, it's really hard. But I remember literally thinking this sort of like one specific night, thinking to myself, I'm going to do a YouTube channel. And I remember thinking, if you do this, you will get hate mail. And you read these stories of people that get this hate mail. Like, you read people that maybe they don't like that there's a maybe on Star Wars, for example, like there's a female in a specific role, and like that was a role that used to be for men, and what, you know, this female that played a role in Star Wars gets all this hate mail, or it's maybe someone from you know, maybe they're Asian, and like I wanted a white person there, and like, why are Star Wars racists coming out of the woodwork? But they do. These Star Wars racists come out. We don't want an Asian woman in this role. Like, she did a great job. She's awesome. But they hate on her, and you read where they, you know, a year or two later, like, this drove me into the closet. Like, I couldn't believe how much hatred I got for just doing Star Wars. And you feel so bad for them because they were awesome in the role. But, you know, just racists and you know, misogynists come out of the woodwork in these contexts. But you, like, if you're gonna be an atheist who's gonna actually speak up about it, you have to develop a thick skin. And it's amazing to me what happens when you go through what you mentioned, and you do make that conscious decision that says, I actually don't care what you think. Like, I actually don't care anymore what you think.
Actually, like, not just saying the words.
Right.
Actually, that's
Actually
easy.
And also, to be honest, it's a huge distraction in terms of time, because if you're spending your days thinking, how do I respond to this comment? How do I respond to the haters? Like, I have to respond to them. They're literally taking you away from creating the content. Like, your focus, you literally have to be like, you create content, you get hate mail that says, you are so awful, I hope you never create something else, and you create something else 10 minutes later. Like, you need to be like that shock and all, like, oh, they're ignoring me. You need to ignore Christians. Like, learn, I'm not saying this to you, Kelsey, just to the community. Learn to ignore Christians. Ignore them. Like, purposefully ignore Christians. You will not be healthy unless you learn how to do it. Doesn't mean you don't care about them as humans, as family, but if they're giving you any kind of feedback from the worldview perspective, you have to learn to literally drown them out. If you don't, you'll never end up moving forward. You're constantly going to be doing damage control. How are they seeing me? Don't worry about it. Get yourself on your mission. Find your mission. My mission is to change the world and to speak loudly and proudly against why this is mythology and it's toxic. Get on that path. And once you do, say, what does it take for me to be as strong as I can, as bold as I can? And do not let anybody take you away. And I don't just mean in terms of their comments, but the time. If it's taking you time to respond to the naysayers, don't take that time. Ignore them. Ignore the naysayers. Act like they're not there, because they don't matter. There are people that do want to listen to you, and they need you to speak up. But if you're taking your time for the naysayers and the trolls, you're not focused on get your focus right, and then laser focus, stay on target. And honestly, for anyone that's doing a channel, and I applaud Kelsey so much for doing it, I'm so grateful. Again, I'm going to put her, please go like and subscribe to her channel. Please give her support. We need her to keep going. But anyone that's thinking about doing what Kelsey's been doing, getting started here, please do not do it if you're going to get upset about the trolls. They're going to come out of the woodwork. They're going to hate on you. You have to be ready to say, I don't give a rat's ass about what you think of me. I will change this world. I'm a culture changer. And, you know, I mean, honestly, just looking at the other side, do you think Donald Trump gives a rat's ass about what we think of him? No, he doesn't care. He just does his thing. We're going to do the same thing back. We're not going to care about what he thinks. We're not going to care about what the Christians think. We're going to make a difference in this world. And if you keep on trying to apologize for every step you take, I'm sorry, this sounds harsh, but your worldview's shit, you're never going to get on target. So, you know, you got to get focused. Anyway, I'm digressing there, but did you have any comments there before I get back to some of our group comments?
Yes, that brings up two things to me. First of all, the fire in your belly. The fire in your belly makes it real easy for you to deal with naysayers, deal with people coming at you. The fire in my belly tells me that being that character in this book that people have talked to me about all my life is abusive. And I know all these different ways that it's abusive. Like, you know, I have a fire in my belly that tells me all this mythology is very similar to the Christian mythology. So you can come at me, but I've got this fire in my belly telling me, I don't care what you say because it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you're having your own personal fire in your belly is an absolute must. Also, I've learned to, it's amazing. People can put words out there in the atmosphere, or put comments out there in the atmosphere, or texts out there in the atmosphere. And I am no longer feeling like I need to address it. Like, oh boy, this text exists. Now I have to do something with it. No, I don't have to do a goddamn thing with it if I don't want to. Like this. So I guess that could get us into like personal boundaries. Like, I'm not interested in allowing your text to determine what I'm going to do with my brain for the next few hours. Like, nope. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
just having a sense of knowing what you want to engage and knowing what you don't, and you're free from engaging.
Yeah. I think apologists play that game really well. And in many ways, you really do have to just be like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. Like, I could, for example, on my channel, I could invite apologists to come on and we could debate, is God real? Is the Bible good or not? Is, all this stuff. And there are channels that do that, and I appreciate them very much, and I applaud them for what they're doing. But there's a part of me that feels like we need a place in this discussion to say, we're also a group that says those discussions are permanently over. We're not here to debate the Bible anymore. We're here to talk about healing from it. And people that constantly want to debate it, I think they're doing great stuff in some ways, but they're also perhaps giving us this sense of like, this discussion needs to go on. Is the Bible really from God or not? It's like we need at some point it's like you're going to a counselor, and your husband he's just beat the shit out of you for 10 years straight. He's giving you black eyes. He said you're an idiot. He hates everything you do. He's not mean. He's forced you against your will. And it's just like you're in this counselor's office, and the counselor is trying to get you to say, maybe if you were kind of nicer to him, he'd be nicer to you. You're like, come on, like at some point that discussion needs to stop. You're truly now becoming part of the problem. This isn't, well, if you were nicer to him, he'd be nice to you back. He's a hardcore abuser. You need to fucking leave him. He's done. You're done with that. And it's like we kind of schmooze these conversations with Christians like, we're done. We are done with Christianity. We're here to heal, not to talk about maybe it's got something good to it. And I think a lot of us get taken by a little bit of a ride with that dynamic that happens. And it's such a cool thing to just be like, I'm here at a completely different spot, and to say those conversations, those debates in my mind are over. And at that point, your vision gets real clear. And I just want to say this, and maybe we'll wrap up in a minute. When we're talking about the church, since we talk about community and the obsession that we have with that group, I want to turn it for a second to say they are still obsessed with this stuff. Like, we're out. We understand how we got obsessed with it, and we're thankfully unwinding that. They're still obsessed with it. And I've said it before this way, and I'll keep saying it. They love Jesus more than they love you. It could be your spouse. It could be your parents, your children. They are required. Jesus says, if you don't love me more than father, mother, all this children, spouses, lands, everything, if you don't love me more than anyone else and anything else, you're not worthy to be my disciple. They are required by strong injunction from Jesus to love him more than anything else. The great commandment. What's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You are commanded to love a mythology-based character, a literary character, and they truly are obsessed. And that's why in some ways it's like you're talking to someone that's 95 years old in a nursing home, where you come in and they say, you walk in the room and they're just watching Jeopardy, and you think you're going to have a nice conversation. They start talking about the chipmunks around you and the squirrels and it's like you're seeing things that aren't there, and and they're maybe this is your own parent, and they've forgotten, like, oh, who are you? Like, it's me, I'm your son. They don't know you anymore. Their mind is gone. Christians who are in love with the mythology-based literary character, who are obsessed with him, and they love him more than you, the real flesh and blood in front of them, you can't really go anywhere with that. Until they see it, they can't see it. And I'm sorry, but in some ways, we're going to have to simply say it's time to create a new community, and to find my people, to choose my own family, and to realize their obsession is killing your ability to connect with them in any kind of healthy way. And it sucks. I know it sucks, but it's reality. They're obsessed with somebody that's not there. They are more in love with a lover that doesn't exist than the lover that's right in the room next to them. Anyway, I'm going off to, on a soapbox there, but I hope for some of you that some of this stuff that we're talking about helps. We had about, I think about 50 pages of notes to go through. We got through about 10 of them. So, and I think it's going to expand from there. So we'll definitely do a follow-up. But Kelsey, do you want to give us a final parting thought here, and then we'll wrap it up?
Baby steps. No matter where you're at in this, don't let yourself be freaked out about the big picture. Just baby steps.
Well said. Well said. I love that. Yeah, for so many of us, especially if you're new to it. I mean, if you've been out for a couple of years, you know it gets better. But at the beginning, be easy on yourself. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. You're not used to being kind to yourself, but be kind to yourself now. You need it. And certainly, I'll just say, let us help you if we can. Reach out to the community. A lot of Facebook groups that help, but we care about you. And we're sorry for your pain. We're sorry for the loss. And we want to love on you until it gets better. Hopefully, at least some of you will find your loved ones escaping as well and being able to get back to those relationships. That's certainly the ideal. But well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm sorry that we didn't get to the rest of it, but I love the comments. I keep the StreamYard up for a while after we're done, so I can go back to the comments. It's easier than going back to the YouTube video later. I love the comments. I get so much, as much as I hopefully encourage you all. You all encourage me so much. You give me so much. I literally go through the comments and end up having like 15 to 20 or more ideas for other live stream topics later. So it's just like this ballooning effect. So thank you all so much for being such an encouragement to me as well. And Kelsey, always good to see you. We'll do this again in a week or two, but thanks for being a part of my channel. And everyone, please go check. Before we wrap up, let's go check your channel. You have, you had 25 and now you have 30. Everyone, please go check out Accidentally Agnostic. We need to get her up to 35 as soon as possible. I'm going to put the link one more time here. Get her up to 35 today, and let's get her up to 50 by next time we meet. But thank you so much for being a part of this community. We appreciate your words in this as well, and so great to see you again.
You too. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.